The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports. You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast.
I'm going to talk to you about this football team and that quarterback, man. I mentioned Ben Roethlisberger as a new target for Trevor Lawrence because no matter how bad he played, I remember he won a Super Bowl when he only threw for 120 some odd yards, like 123. It was like 9 out of 23 for maybe even like 106 or 116. He'd be down and running around and things wouldn't be going his way and he'd throw interceptions, even against the Jaguars. Y'all remember he threw some picks against the Jags. And all of a sudden, just when he needed to do something, he did it. The drive tonight at the end of the game, after the Jaguars had taken a 24-21 lead and they kicked off, and the Chiefs basically ate up about 7 or 8 minutes on the last drive, and then did the worst possible thing, and that scored a touchdown. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, they just know how to win. That's how a team plays when they know how to win. And then Trevor gets the ball back, minute and a half. I think it was like a minute and 45 seconds. They used 2 plays up, and it was 3rd and 8. They had only gained 2 yards. 2. And it was a 101 left. And somebody said they used up 45 seconds on those 2 plays. Trevor scrambling, running around, not taking timeouts. And then he does what we all thought that they were going to be able to do this year. He hails one down the sideline, a perfect pass to Brian Thomas Jr., who caught it, got his feet got his feet down, and went out of bounds. Then another pass to De'Ami Brown, and then a penalty. And then after that, they get the ball. You think they got 2 more plays. Trevor backs up from center, falls, gets up, falls back down. But on his 3rd try, it sounds like an Easter Sunday sermon. On the 3rd try, he got up and he rose. And instead of trying to throw the ball or throwing the ball away and making this a one-play game, Trevor Lawrence took off and ran and dove into the end zone. Ironically, early in the night, he tried to dive in on a sort of a tush-push sort of play and got the ball knocked out of his hand in the first quarter when the Jaguars could have scored a touchdown. And they left with no points. And then later on in the second half, there was pass interference. It was still very, very crowded. In fact, there were 3 options on the play. You could have tried Parker Washington, but he got held up. And I think they ruled it as incidental contact because it wasn't an illegal pick. They just bumped into each other because of the way it went. And the tight end that went out, whose man bumped into Parker, was open. But Travis Hunter was open, wide open, on a crosser right in the middle of the field. And the ball got intercepted. Doesn't matter that it wasn't necessarily his fault. It happened. And that was adding to this full experience that we get with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So many things going against them. There was no confidence in the press box with a minute and 44 seconds or a minute 45 seconds. There was really no confidence on 3rd and 8 from their own territory with a minute and 1 second left to play. And Trevor Lawrence delivered. He delivered. And this team grew up. We saw them grow up because they won a game against a really good team that used to do that are customarily doing stuff like that to other teams. I was all prepared to come in here and say they lose 28-24, no moral victories. They got to clean up some stuff. We'll talk about that stuff tomorrow. Tonight, we celebrate. Tonight, we go on and keep the party going. Tonight, I'm not talking about anything bad about this football team because they're 4-1. They're tied at the top of the AFC South. And they did this in front of a national TV audience where they put people on notice that they will never quit. They will never, ever quit. And I hear that the people on the broadcast, Troy Aikman, I heard they started using my term gritty. It's not mine. I even heard that Marcus Spears, my man Swagoo, he used the term gritty. I saw the word gritty all over the place. Y'all listen to Locked On Jaguars each and every day, and you know that is something that I have been saying that, hold on, when it comes to Trevor and when it comes to this team, it might not be pretty. It might just be gritty. And I'm fine with that. Absolutely fine with it. Still very opportunistic. Didn't quite run the ball the way that they had been running it. Got banged up and have some injuries. But never mind that. Your Jacksonville Jaguars are 4-1. Did it on national TV to shut up a bunch of people about this city. Stadium full of folks. Happy. Liam Cohen impressed me as he walked off the field, because he looked like he expected to win. The Jaguars are a good team. They can be even better if they clean some stuff up, stuff that we'll talk about tomorrow. But I want to talk about the dude that is right now leading the charge to be the Defensive Player of the Year in the National Football League. That is Mr. Devin Lloyd, Mr. soon-to-be either extended or franchise tag Devin Lloyd.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
We're going to start looking at this game and kind of breaking it down. It really looked like a tale of, it's not even really two halves. It was almost really like the first quarter and a half maybe for the Chiefs versus the rest of the game, and it was sloppy the rest of the game.
Yeah, you know, after the first couple of, really the first three offensive drives, the Chiefs got really, really weird after that. Once again, I mean, they were putting up a ton of yards. I mean, they put up almost 500 yards of offense, Chris,
Yep.
And they won the turnover battle. You look at the box score, and they absolutely dominated this game. I mean, really, the only thing you could really point to, I mean, are probably the three biggest things in this game. I think you'd say the thing that really flipped the field. Obviously, the interception, the pick six, game changer. That was the most significant moment of this game because that was a 14-point swing. Certainly, you're going to count the penalties. The penalties on the kickoff for Hurts and Butker don't count getting it all the way out to the 40. So you include that amongst the other penalty yardage that the Chiefs had tonight, and that somewhat offsets a little bit of the issues. But those three things in particular, you know, the kickoff out of bounds, the penalties in general, and the pick six. I mean, those three plays were crucial to Jacksonville's chances tonight.
Yeah, and Jacksonville played a good game after the first couple of drives. They found a way. I mean, they were down 14-0, and then they came back and went up 21-14, and with the pick six. Kansas City looked like they were getting ready to put it to another touchdown lead with 21-14 going the other direction, and all of a sudden, Pat Mahomes throws a pick six, and it's not something that you're used to seeing him do. He was fooled, and that's really what that comes down to. He never saw the linebacker. He never saw Devin Lloyd in that space, and I'll give credit where credit's due. Tyquan Thornton made a heck of a play trying to catch him from behind. And showed heart and showed what you want. And he showed that multiple times this season. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from him. He had a good game at different times, but it just was not enough. They couldn't sustain anything in the second half. You look at the first half, they scored 2 touchdowns on the first 2 drives, looked like they're going to be unstoppable all night long. And then all of a sudden penalties start getting in the way.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, it was penalties all across the board. I mean, it was not only just a couple of times special teams penalties hurting them in their own situations. I mean, it hurt them on field position on a couple of racing, a couple of nice little returns by Brashard Smith. And I'll be honest, I mean, I thought some of those were a little soft. Like maybe there were some things that the Chiefs have been doing that Jacksonville may have just flagged to the officials because they wanted them watched for, because you got, three significant, either the double team penalties or holding penalties on the Chiefs on the returns. Those seemed a little bit abundant. A lot of them called for it just to be random luck. So it feels a little bit like maybe that was an emphasis that the Jaguars had the officials looking for specifically, because they were calling stuff that doesn't normally get called, I thought, tonight in some of those situations, especially like the double team that Nico got called for. He kind of just ran into him. I don't know if it was really a double team block. And even the two holds on Cochran, I mean, it kind of looked like both guys were kind of pulling each other to the ground. So I don't know. I mean, I thought they were both a little soft.
On the first one specifically, Cochran's guy was falling to the ground as Cochran was blocking him. I mean, it wasn't one of those things where he, stopped his progression or anything. It was the guy was literally going to the ground and Cochran is still sitting there trying to block him and keep him out of the play. I didn't like that call. I didn't like the other one either, but it is what it is at this point. You look at what this is going to mean, though, for Kansas City. They moved to 2-3 on the season, and they have a tough game coming up against the Detroit Lions on Sunday night, and that's the last game they'll play without Rashee Rice. But so many things could have gone right for Kansas City. I mean, you saw Brashard Smith get more involved in the offense. That was a positive. You saw positives from Xavier Worthy. You saw Tyquan Thornton continue his evolution and do different things for this offense. Travis Kelce was more involved. The running game got going to a little bit besides just Patrick Mahomes. All those different things went right, and yet you still couldn't find a way to get a win in the win column. What was the thing that stood out to you the most in this game, Matt?
I mean, we set aside the penalties and the back-breaking play, and let's just set aside the pick six we were talking about earlier by Devin Lloyd. I mean, it's just to me, the craziness about some of the penalties just absolutely bailing out the Jaguars tonight kind of explains everything. I mean, their touchdown drive to end the first half, you had maybe again a soft pass interference penalty on, call on Jalen Watson. There was a lot of things that were pass interference in the second half that weren't called that I thought were worse than that penalty on Jalen Watson. And then you had the dropped interception that, I mean, Nick Bolton pretty much had until Drew Tranquill knocked it out of his hands. And then Tranquill probably had a chance at it too and couldn't get it down. Brian Cook has an interception on the penalty that Jamari Connor draws. So again, there were plays abundant for the Chiefs to be made. And I mean, Andy Reid will, probably say it was just by a hair, just by that much that they lost this game. And the reality of it is, I mean, this was a game that you look at the box score and the Chiefs, they should have won this thing by double digits. And then you look at these individual plays. And again, a lot of games come down to maybe 5 plays that are 50-50 calls. And they go which way they go to the other, which way to go that both teams can sometimes decide it. And this was one of those games. All 5 went the Jaguars' way.
Trevor Lawrence makes what was probably the play of the game, falling down, getting stepped on, getting up, and still finding a way to get into the end zone. And they talked about it on the broadcast afterwards. If he's not able to get up and anybody touches him while he's down, they're rushing to get the ball off, and it's 4th down, so they can't spike it, and they have no timeouts left. That is pretty much the exact situation you want to put them in, and Kansas City's defense couldn't get it done. And part of that, I will say this, part of that I think was them being tired, because the other part of this game was that they seemed to be on the field a ton in this game. And I do think that played into, the pass rush. But the one thing that I think that really stuck out to me is I don't remember seeing any cover zeros. I was expecting Spagnuolo to start sending pressure late, especially when things tightened up a little bit, and he never really went there. That kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what the blitz numbers were coming out of this game, because it did feel like the Chiefs brought a couple of blitzes in the first half that were pretty effective,
Yep.
and it just seemed like in the second half that they you're right. I mean, that they just pulled them off, that they really weren't going after Lawrence that much. I think a little bit of it obviously was that Spags was trying to adjust a little bit to how much Trevor Lawrence was scrambling, so he was using a little bit more of a spy there for a while. It wasn't consistent. I mean, Trevor, to his credit, seemed to do a pretty good job of knowing when there was a spy there and when there wasn't, for him to take off and run. And in that play you talked about where he's the right guard steps on his foot and knocks him to the ground, you mentioned that, hey, if he gets touched there, that might very well be the ball game. Lawrence, even after the game, said he was trying to just scramble to get the ball away so he could throw it out of bounds, and lo and behold, he just finds some room and manages to get into the end zone. I mean, again, that's not even a 50-50 play. That's a play that's like a 99-1 play. That's a play that should go the defense's way every single time. But the Chiefs have we've been down that road before. I mean, a lot of people were having an Andrew Luck flashbacks to 2013 because it was the same kind of deal.
Well, and it's crazy because Kansas City had a lot of those plays go their way last year, really kind of helped them winning all those one-score games. This year, it's going in the exact opposite way. The ball has bounced the other direction, and they've got to find a way to overcome it.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I never take nights like this for granted, because there was 26 years from 1982 through 2008 where the Brewers did not go to the postseason. And I was covering the team on a regular basis like I do now. And I will say, after the 1982 season, I thought, when they lost in Game 7 of the World Series, I was very young, and I thought, okay, I was in high school. I thought, okay, I'll be back. Well, here we are. Still have not been back in, 43 years. But hoping to change that this year. But like nights like this is special. Morgan's walk-off hit in 2011. Woody hitting that home run in 2018. And, it's all special to me. It is. These moments tonight was special. I'll always remember it. These two victories over the Cubs, I will always remember it. Just a great night to be out there, walking around before the game and then covering the game. And then afterwards, walking out of the ballpark, looking up at AmFam Field and thinking, man, are we going to see a World Series here? It's great, man. It's an emotional night, and you should be proud to be a Milwaukee Brewers fans. And as I said all along, you guys have had this coming. You guys have had this. This is for the fans out there. This is for the fans. And Contreras said as much when he hit the home run and he was on the phone. Someone asked him, William, who were you calling when you hit that home run? He said, Brewers fans. He gets it. I get it. Everybody should get it. This is for the fans. This is, I've said this for a long time. These moments are for the fans. And going into that game, I said in the podcast yesterday with Ashby pitching, I was a little fearful of that, because I was like, well, how come we're not pitching Priester? Priester, they've won 19 in a row with Priester. Why are we reinventing the wheel? And then Ashby gives up the 3-run home run in the first inning. And there was a lot of doubt, not only from me, but a lot of people, right? It was like, all right, here we go. Going to Chicago, it's going to be 1-1. It looked like it was going to be the Cubs' night. Suzuki hits that first inning 3-run home run. And it's like, oh boy, this is what we're after. And then Imanaga gets the first 2 outs in the bottom of the first inning, and then a couple of base hits, seeing eye base hits. And then Vaughn answers, a former Chicago White Sox who started this year on the south side of Chicago, comes back and burns the Cubs. Hits his first home run since August 15th. August 15th, he hasn't gone yard since that winning streak ended. Vaughn, last time he homered, August 5th, a month and a half, nearly 2 months. And he hits that 3-run jack. And I'm telling you, when he hit it, the ball just kept on carrying and carrying and carrying. And I'm like, eventually it kept on stretching. I don't know how it went out, because at first when he hit it, I thought it was going to be a routine fly ball, but somehow in the corner there at AmFam Field, that ball just kept on carrying out. But I digress. I want to get about the pitching here. So Ashby has a terrible outing, gets bailed out with Vaughn answering with a 3-run blast. And then the Brewers, I think, okay, is Priester going to pitch? They bring in Mears in the second inning. After a couple outs, they bring in Mears. Priester going to pitch. They bring in Miz. Then they bring in Patrick and Koenig and McGill and Uribe. And 6 guys combined to one hit the Cubs from the second inning on. Team Lifeless put up that first inning home run, and the Brewer bullpen, Johnny Bullpen as it's called, Johnny Holstaff, got him down. One hit, and that was given up by the Miz. I mean, all those guys were great. Yeah, maybe Ashby wasn't so good in his outing, but those 6 guys that came after him were great. I mean, and you could do something like that when you have an off day. You have an off day on Tuesday, you reset going into Wednesday. It's an afternoon game, and all these guys are going to be available. He stayed away from Priester. And I said on the podcast yesterday, and I said on ESPN Lacrosse, I said, you know what? Don't be surprised if Priester doesn't pitch and they save him for game 3. They save him on his regular, Peralta. Woody was supposed to pitch in game 2, and then Priester. The Brewers did all this because Woodruff is unavailable. This would have been Woodruff's start. So they go unconventional, and it looked like it was going to backfire, and it didn't. And they got bailed out by 6 guys who came in relief and just were amazing firemen out there putting out every fire. Well, there was no fires to be started because Team Lifeless had 1 hit from the 2nd through the 9th innings. Just incredible. And the Miz? How about the Miz hitting up twice for 104 miles an hour? Yeah, let's face it. When the Miz got into that ball game, a little nervous, right? Because the second part of his season wasn't the best. Control problems. But the moment was not too big for the Miz. And how about the Miz screaming as he fielded that ball and ran over to first base? Said he didn't want to throw it to Vaughn over first base because he felt like he might overthrow him. He ran over there and screamed and showed emotion. I love that. That's what we need more. We need more of that in baseball. Contreras dialing up after he hit the home run. We need more of that. We need more of that to a sport that's pretty robotic at times, right? We need more personalities. And I love it. The old school baseball guy's going to say, well, that's not following baseball protocol. That's so stupid. That is dumb. You should be able to trash talk, do whatever you want. They do it in the NBA. They do it in the NFL. Why not? And Miz showing some emotion there. Yeah, I don't know if Murphy was completely on board with it, but who cares? Got to be you. And I love it. I love it. 57 pitches from Miz, 3 innings, 2 walks, 1 hit, 4 Ks in there as well. He got the win. He got the win. He was a guy who we didn't even know he was going to be on the postseason roster. And there he was, getting wins. Koenig was great. Mears. Patrick in relief. First postseason for Patrick. That guy wasn't dirtying up the bed at all. McGill, Uribe, fantastic. Everybody got a little work in and saved Priester for game 3 in Chicago. How about that? Game 3 in Chicago, they might have had to do this. But with game 2, they bullpen their way. And I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to see this, right? I'm sure this isn't going to be the last time. But they bridged the gap to Priester. And we'll see if Quintana is in the mix as well. Maybe Quintana is somewhere in the mix on Wednesday. We'll get to more of that on tomorrow's show. But, man, it was another great night. Another great night. It was speechless out there, man. Juan hits that 3-run jack, and then Contreras dials up his, which brings us to Churio. Churio, there's a new Mr. October, man, and it's Jackson Churio, right?
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
This is the Dodgers Postcast. Your instant game reaction for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Who's got the Rolaids? Who's got the blood pressure cuff? Because that was ridiculous. Dave Roberts, thank you for nothing. Totally, as my friend said, totally unnecessary. There was absolutely no reason to put us all through that unless you had the over in this game and you needed 7 runs instead of 5. What the hell were you doing there? Blake frickin' Trinan? Are you kidding me? His ERA in the month of September was 11 plus. His walk to hit ratio or walk to strikeout ratio, 35-19. That was an absolute abysmal decision. Ridiculous. Absolutely unnecessary. No reason for it. Vesia was fine. Although my buddies here that I'm hanging out with, we're on a golf trip in Palm Springs. And they are not Vesia fans, and they did not believe Vesia could get it done. I was like, you guys need to calm down. Vesia will be fine. And he was. But even more fine, Roki Sasaki. That was the call. That's what needed to happen right there. And if you'd have done that in the beginning, we wouldn't have had this problem. It would have been 4-1, 4-2 at the worst, as 10 hyenas says, Dave Dumbass Roberts. Yeah, that was unnecessary. Why? What are you trying to prove? We all know that Sasaki can get it done. We've seen him do it. He is locked in. Blake Trinan's been okay over the last couple, but if you're playing the numbers game, the schematics of it all, then Blake Trinan has given you no confidence. Yeah, I don't know. Of course, we got one fire Dave Roberts. This is all about Dave Roberts. Dave Roberts is so lucky the boys continue to save his job. LOL. Shout out to Freddie. Yeah, that was fantastic from Freddie. Holy cow. This was a phenomenally fun game. It didn't need to be this fun or exciting or heart-wrenching. Hey, there's somebody else here in Palm Springs. I can't read it. When I put it on the screen, I can't read it. Knee before Zod 21. I'm in Palm Springs. Well, welcome. I'm in Indio. So getting ready for a couple of days of golf. And we're going to have a little bit more fun tomorrow now that the Dodgers are up 2-1. A 2-0 rather, 2-0, 4-3 the final. They squeak one out. Shohei Ohtani finally gets a hit, which was kind of a relief because he was 0 for 7 with 6 Ks before that hit. Scorched one up the middle, 113 miles an hour. That was fantastic. Teo in the 7th, 2 singles up the middle, and Freddie drives one to right to send Luzardo to the showers. And Luzardo had the Dodgers mystified. Like the 7th inning has been their inning. Yesterday, or everyone said yesterday, including all the announcers, in game 1 of this series, Dodgers put up their runs in the 7th. In the 6th, to get out of a jam, Miggy Rojas, absolutely fantastic play, heady play, fielding the ball at third and then diving into third base with his glove to get Trey Turner, who we all know is a speedy runner. So that was clutch. So this was, really a little bit of everything that you could ask for in a baseball game. We had fantastic pitching for the first 6 innings. Dodgers, it was a one-hit game for a good 5 or 6 innings, and that was courtesy of Mookie Betts, I believe. But then they broke it open in the 7th, and we felt comfortable, like 4-0. That should be enough. Emmett Sheehan came in and pitched pretty well until he wasn't pitching well anymore. But I was surprised by that call as well. I mean, that's another thing. I don't know if that's coming from Dave Roberts or from Freeman or whoever is making that call. I don't know. I was surprised by that. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the chat on giving Sheehan 2 innings. He gave up 1 run on 2 hits. He ended up getting through 2. But actually, no, did he get through 2? It says he did get through 2. Surprised by that. I thought he got yanked there, because then they bring in Trinan in the 8th. No, they didn't. That was the 9th. So Sheehan did get through 2. He got out of it. So let's give him a little credit. It was a little shaky. I thought there was better options on the table. Give him 1 frame, and then you've got other guys in there that can pitch. I don't know that they're going to go to Tyler Glass now again, but that's an option. You got Kershaw in there now. So I was a little surprised by that. Made it a little bit more interesting, but again, it was only 1 run, and the Dodgers were still comfortably ahead at that point. And had Dave Roberts given the ball to Sasaki, like every half-wit baseball fan was saying, why did he overthink this? Seriously, just do the obvious thing. Do you need to make this interesting? Do you owe Trinan a favor? Like, does he have pictures of your family or you or whatever doing something untoward? I don't know. Like, what is going on there? Like, really? Ooh, is this coming from the league office? Hey, Dave, make it a little bit more interesting and let that garbage can Blake Trinan pitch in a close game. I mean, and he's just making dumb pitches. The pitch to Castellanos that he reached out and grabbed from the right side of the plate, that was a nice piece of hitting. That was a good hit. But the pitch to what's his name? Real Muto, a fastball up and in a 1-2 count. That's just a bad pitch. You can't throw that pitch in that location in that count. Like, seriously, you need to be better than that. That's how you lose important games. Frank noticed the same thing I did. Edman has a hell of a knuckleball. Maybe he'll use that at the pin. Yeah, I mean, Freddie Freeman dug that out. That was seriously a knuckler. Yeah, we could have pulled him out of the bullpen. History Man says, what if Sasaki had done all of this and it would be a different conversation? What if Sasaki had done all this? Then it would be a different conversation. I don't know what you mean there, dude, because Sasaki didn't do that. Sasaki came in and ended the game, which is what we all thought he would have done in, the start of the 9th inning. So give him even more credit that he came in a really tough spot with the tying run on base in scoring position. And he came in and got the out and ended the game for the Dodgers. That's tougher than starting a frame. Totally tougher. So, and he was like, did you see him when they showed him like when Vesia and Trinan were warming up? Sasaki's sitting over there in a jacket, like half asleep, right? His mouth opening, his eyes closed, he was about ready to fall asleep. So the fact that he was able to, wake up and get in there and slam the door and win the game was clutch as hell. Give him more credit for that. Wow, Pete, that was a close one. Could have been a disaster collapse. Mookie got the 2 outs in the 3rd and 2nd, and then good Edman pass to Freddie to scoop it out up the ball, close in. Dodgers up 2-0 heading home. So yeah, everything is going well, and let's get to some accolades here.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Wow. Let's do 2. Let's do an offensive one and a defensive one. Teo, our offensive player of the game, 2 for 3, a run scored. No, I'm sorry. let me take that back. I thought he knocked in those 2 runs. That was Will Smith, who is the offensive player of the game. 1 for 2 with 2 RBI coming in off the bench. A clutch piece of hitting for Will Smith. And we got to say Blake Snell looked fantastic. They were talking about it during the game. They were interviewing Tyler Glasnow, and he said, listen, Blake Snell is a big game pitcher. And tonight he showed us that. It was fantastic. It was comforting. It is what you expect from a guy that is, paid the way that he is and has performed the way that he has throughout his career. So the fact that he came in and did that was exactly what you need and what you want and what you expect. And it is welcoming, and it is something that the Dodgers absolutely deserve because they've paid big money for him. So that's you can't ask for more than what he did today. To be specific, 6 innings, 1 hit. He did walk 4 though. That's a tough number right there. But you put it up against 9 Ks, and it's a fantastic outing. 99 pitches and a 1.38 ERA this postseason, which is of course just today. So BB says no more Vesia, no Trinan. I don't agree with you guys on Vesia. I don't understand what you expect. He got the job done. What's wrong with Vesia? He had 1 bad outing. Vesia, 2/3 of an inning, 9 pitches. He got the job done. It can't all be strikeouts. There was nothing that Vesia did tonight that made me go, OS, OF, what the hell are we doing? It was the antithesis of what Trinan did. So I'm going to agree to disagree on Vesia. It's the Locked On Dodgers postcast on the Locked On Dodgers YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. By the way, I'm Pete Fox, covering sports in LA since 2007 for ESPN LA and NBC Sports Radio. I usually give the credentials at the beginning, but most of you know that. Those of you that are new to the program, welcome. I was just a little bit excited because that was a fantastically exciting win for the Dodgers, 4-3 in Philadelphia at Citizens Bank. As the crowd there was definitely geared up there in the 9th inning with an opportunity to at least tie that game and then tie the series. But they did not get it done. The Dodgers come home needing to win 1 with a 2-game advantage.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
The bad injury luck continues for the Chargers as running back Omarion Hampton is now headed to injured reserve, and it's a devastating blow to an offense that is already missing several key starters.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Daniel, when it rains, it pours. The Chargers running back room suffers a devastating blow as Omarion Hampton is going on IR with an ankle injury, and now the Chargers are going to have to scramble to figure things out at the running back position. And that begs the question, with all these injuries, with all these issues, are the Chargers still a playoff team in 2025? And I think one thing is very clear. It's time to see what Andre James can do in the middle of the Chargers offensive line.
Man, especially after the terrible sequence that's been going viral on social media of what happened in the game between Justin Herbert and Bradley Bozeman. But unfortunately, on this Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions, the biggest storyline today is the Chargers losing another key offensive piece as Omarion Hampton is the second of the Chargers running backs to end up on injured reserve, now down their top 2 running backs and their top 2 offensive tackles at the moment. Doesn't get much tougher than that for an offense, and they've already been paying the price, and this is really one they couldn't afford to lose. Omarion Hampton was just starting to hit his stride over the last few weeks, and it was just another, kind of freak thing. A 4th and 2 play that Tyler Conklin dropped the pass. Omarion Hampton was tripped by Frankie Louvu, came up hobbled, never came back into the game, but did seem to be trying to come back in to a certain extent and wasn't able to. Now we know he's going to be missing, David, the next 4 games at the very least.
Yeah, just a devastating blow. The kid just seemed like he was just starting to rev up the engine. Seemed like he was really starting to be a focal point of the offense. He showed what he was capable of doing and felt like he was in line for more touches, for a bigger piece of that offensive pie. And, of course, another horrible injury. And I guess one of the good things is, at least according to Ian Rappaport, he did say that Omarion Hampton should be coming off in just the requisite 4 games, which would put him in line to come back for the Steelers game, because obviously you have to miss at least 4 games, but it could be more than that as well. So just a horrible injury, and the Chargers are going to have to really scramble to figure out how to fix this issue.
Yeah, and I mean, before the game he got injured last week, in weeks 3 and 4, he had 294 yards from scrimmage, averaging almost 150 yards of offense per game, and that's the guy that you're losing on an offense that has already been bad, and has been bad specifically in the second half, where you kind of need a running back like this to be able to try to put teams away when you're in that position. Chargers scored the least second half points in the NFL so far, or tied with the Giants in last place. So that's where the Chargers are at, and can't really afford it. He also has become a big weapon in the passing game too. 17 catches over the last 3 games, is tied with Keenan Allen for the second most on the team. And he's just been good. Like, he had a legitimate chance of potentially being the offensive rookie of the year. We'll see what happens with Genty, but he was right there with him. There's not much difference between those guys so far. 15th in the NFL in rushing yards, which is impressive since he only played 4.5 games and didn't really start getting the workload until week 3. 15th in yards per carry, 7th in yards after contact per attempt, and also didn't have much to work with because he ranked 30th out of 44 eligible running backs according to True Media in yards before contact per attempt, yards he had the ball before he was getting hit by one of the defenders on the opposite side. So, and now I think you look at what's next, and I think the problem is, David, is the options on the roster right now are not going to be very inspiring as far as who's taking some of those snaps or most of those snaps.
Yeah, the only 2 guys really that you have left is Kaimani Vidal and Hassan Haskins, who have barely touched the football so far this season. It was Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton to start the year, and basically I think Kaimani Vidal got a couple of carries before this game, and Hassan Haskins got his first touches in this football game, this past game. So not a lot of touches out there for them. They're going to have to get revved up very, very quickly, and it just seems like they have to go make a move. They have to add to this room, because what they have in the building right now is certainly not enough.
No, it's hard to feel confident in either of those guys. And I'm sure Kamani gets signed at this point, but as of right now, he's on the practice squad. Like, they don't even have anybody. Yeah. And to show you kind of how much they didn't trust those guys, actually, neither of those guys had a carry before this game. Every carry they had, Omarion Hampton had more carries in this game before he got injured than both of these guys have combined all season, which shows you kind of the lack of faith that they had, or just how much better Omarion Hampton was than those guys, because even after Najee Harris's injury, we heard it's going to be a committee approach, and then they literally didn't give it to anybody else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Last year, Kamani Vidal, 34 carries for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2.7 yards per carry. Last season for Kamani Vidal, 3.6 yards per carry on 43 carries, 1 receiving touchdown, no rushing touchdowns. So I know that fans are probably wishing they had held on to Rocket Sanders at this point, but yeah, I think the point is somebody has to be added into the mix. I'd like to see what Amar Johnson can do on the practice squad, just to see something different, because I kind of know what you have right now on the roster, but it doesn't feel like the answer is there, and you're probably not going to be able to find a 1-for-1 replacement. I'll just say you can't really at this point, at least not on the open market, right? There's no one that's going to be able to come in and provide you anything like that. But I think that leads to the first buy or sell of the day here from Sayal55, who says, buy or sell with Hampton's injury, the Chargers should trade for Alvin Kamara or make an offer to bring back Rocket Sanders. David, obviously the big name here is Alvin Kamara. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at Alvin Kamara, he's been in the league for a very, very long time. Is one of the best receiving backs in the last 10 years. I think when you actually look at the numbers, I mean, a guy who has caught 50 passes the last 3 seasons before this season, and probably on track to catch another 50 plus this season. 70 carries for 283 yards, 1 touchdown, 3.9 yards per carry. It's solid, it's decent. And then 17 receptions for 77 yards. Nothing spectacular there, at least so far. But Alvin Kamara is a guy that's very, very patient, a guy who has very good vision, who can really exploit the openings in the defense. This guy, if he's got some blocks in front of him, it seems like he's kind of moving in slow motion, but he's not. And I think, when you look at some of the best athletes across sports, it looks like they're making it look very, very easy, but they're moving at a very, very high rate of speed. And it's just because they're so good at kind of what they do. And I kind of liken that to Alvin Kamara and his kind of movement skills in space. And if there is a deal to be made here, absolutely the Chargers should be looking at trying to do this, because they need help. They need somebody who can make a difference, who can at least provide some quality touches. And I think with Alvin Kamara, he can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he definitely, raises the ceiling and the floor of that room if you make that kind of trade, just because you know what you get. He's also one of the most masterful players at letting his blocks develop, being able to see the open field and have that kind of open field vision for an offense that's going to have to manufacture some yards at this point with the injuries that they have so far. And it's also hard to go off his stats. I mean, 2 of the last 3 years, 2 years before this, barely over 4 yards per carry, 1 year under, 1 year over. This year, he hasn't hit the 4 yards per carry mark, which is kind of the gold standard of, okay, that's efficiency. But it's hard. He's also in a bad situation. And I think for me, that's probably why I wouldn't do it, just because I don't think Alvin Kamara at this point is going to be able to improve what he has in front of him or be able to overcome the short-handed Chargers offensive line. Like, running the football is a running back stat, but I can tell you that even with, Omarion's kind of modest yards per carry over the first few weeks, you still knew he was good because he was breaking tackles in the backfield and getting much more than he should have, because there really wasn't much there to work with. I think that Alvin Kamara at this, as a 30-year-old running back, is going to be able to overcome what the Chargers have put out there offense-wise. And to me, this is, they'll never trade again, who's been an inactive, healthy scratch for the Cleveland Browns, nor should they. They've already sent away a 2026 and 2027 draft pick at this. You only have picks in each of the next drafts with no projected contemporary picks at this moment. I think what it ends up coming down to, though, is what it's going to cost. Is he going to cost a mid-round pick at this point in his career? I'm not sure, but the only premium picks I'm sending out at this point are for an edge rusher or an offensive lineman that can be signed long-term at a position that you already have a need at, that you would have been probably spending one of those picks on next year anyways. But that's where I would be with it. But I do understand, where everyone's at. There needs to be an urgency right now, because right now it feels like things are spiraling. And I think the biggest question now is, are the Chargers still a playoff team after that 3-0 start that they had?
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Losing to UCLA, I don't even think was the worst thing that Franklin had to deal with. It was the conversations after he landed back in State College.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Brian, you and I wanted to start with this because losing to Oregon and then losing to UCLA, the worst part about all of this might be that Franklin might lose the team.
Look, there's this expectation that this was the year. You lose Oregon, overtime game, it is what it is, but everything's still in front of you. Losing to UCLA, now you're on that cusp. you may not even make the playoff. Like, that is hard to fathom, going from a team that was almost ranked number one to, wait a minute, we're close. We lose one more game. We're 9-3. We're on the cusp of not being. That can cause some problems. So it's usually one of two directions. Everybody just dials in and you're good. Or even if it's just a handful of guys, if they're out, like if they're not giving everything in prep during the week and all that, that can sour a roster real quick. It only takes 4 or 5 guys and it can go south. How does that work? And here's the other part, and I'm not picking on them. Northwestern is next. Zach, are you excited to cover Northwestern? I mean, honestly, are you really excited to cover Northwestern?
The game that I'm looking forward to, if Penn State beats Northwestern in Iowa, is the Ohio State game.
Right. You know,
that's the end of that. Supposedly we would think that's the end of the season on the line there. That's the complete end.
But if you're not ready for just talking about players, and coaches know this, if you're not getting better against Northwestern and Iowa, what are your chances to even come close to beating Ohio State?
Oh, no. But for the entertainment and the what if factor, Ohio State is still presumably on the table.
Yeah. 100%. And Ohio State better not take Penn State lightly either. That's why college football is the greatest sport on earth. There's so many emotional roller coasters. Trying to be even keel as a fan is nearly impossible, but it is interesting. And here's the thing. This week will be the hardest week for Franklin and his staff to coach. Even if they were undefeated, trying to get Penn State players ready to play Northwestern is like banging your head on a wall. That is what I call a helmet game for all the wrong reasons. Not because you're excited about the other team's helmet. It's because you don't respect it that much. I don't care if they threaten to cut their hands off. It's going to be hard. Losing to UCLA, and they were as flat as a 20-year-old Coke. They just cannot get going. They finally do, and they're down 17, 20 points or whatever it was. That's got to be hard on you. So again, does that motivate you? Because they looked motivated in the second half, like they played with their pants on fire, and they should have. But now does that carry over when you didn't quite complete the comeback? I don't know. This was the most weird upset since 1985 in college football. I mean, it's weird. I don't know if there's any lecture that even Paterno could have gave in his prime that would pull that team out of that funk. So from that, it's interesting. And then here's the other part. There's buy-in and all that. And I'm sure that, behind closed doors, you'll never hear this publicly. The AD, other people in the athletic department, is their job. What's the pulse of the roster? Are we going to lose anybody, et cetera? In the portal era, that's possible. I don't think that's the case because I think Penn State's culture has been really, really good. But they weren't ready for UCLA, so you have to at least have it on your radar. That's just part of it. And it's, again, this is the part of the dynamic of college football that makes it more unique than anything else. It's not like the NFL. Well, I'm mad at the head coach, but I'm under contract. It doesn't work that way in college. So the contract, NIL, they can get around and the kid weeps. So many little snippets right there, man. It's really fascinating.
So we'll get to your perspective on what those conversations behind closed doors look like with Pat Kraft and anybody that's, really high up that, has some influence or a lot of influence on the program. Let me respond to a couple of things that you said because obviously everything stood out, but the things that one, Franklin looks defeated. Brian, I don't know if you watched a lot or any of the press conference or snippets of it, but he just looks defeated. From the way that the discourse has been online, and I know that I don't think that James Franklin lives online, but somehow he does. He is always aware of what the media is saying and what the feedback is and what the comments are. So whether that is brought to his attention by the people that help him in the communications department, or it's James Franklin saying, let me scroll through everything. What's my news feed look like? He seems defeated. So something was said or a conversation was had that he didn't like. He says the team is still bought in, but the way that he is acting and the way that he is having his most recent press conference leads me to believe otherwise. As far as the team dynamic goes, I would like to think that most people are at least going to stay bought in, but it is the energy factor. What is the energy level? Because this is a senior-laden team. So you say, is there going to be a roster fallout this offseason with the transfer portal and everything like that? The team's already going to turn over as it is. Drew Aller's going to the NFL, both running backs, a majority of the offensive line, a majority of the defensive line. majority of the secondary, all those guys are going to the NFL. So there's going to be roster turnover as it is. And you said how this is different between NFL contracts and NIL payments. NIL payments are paid up front. Like, they already got their due. So there is no financial incentive because it's, well, I already got paid. And I'm not saying Penn State is like, yep, we're checked out because we already got our paychecks, but it's just kind of the subconscious thing where there's no financial incentive because you got your payment as far as we're all concerned here. Now let's pivot to Pat Kraft and James Franklin and what those conversations, it was definitely a quiet plane ride, but after everyone landed in State College, how do you think that conversation went down between Franklin and Kraft?
They may have had it at different points on the ride or anything else, who knows, but afterwards they got to reassess, why did we get here? It's really bare bones stuff. It's like a business. We had expectations for this profit margin. We're not remotely hitting it. What happened? You got to check every detail because the players were as far away from being ready for that game as possible. That does not fit Penn State. You can bemoan his record in big games all you want, and it's legitimate. One thing they don't do is lose to teams like this. They just don't. And they looked completely apathetic, like they had no interest in the game of football.
They still do. At least Franklin does.
Yeah, like I saw some video of him right after the game. It looked like he had been stunned. Like I'm not trying to pick on anybody in this situation because I've been there too. Like he'd just been in a car crash. And like he was in a daze. He didn't look like it was a surreal moment. It looked like it was beyond that. So I don't know what Mr. Kraft or anybody else can tell him or get from him right after, but I imagine late Sunday into Monday, there had to be some kind of conversations. And to be honest, if you're Franklin, he's got to ask his staff, okay, did anybody see this coming? They got to have that conversation as a staff before he can really tell Kraft. You got to know all the answers on that. Whether or not they're truthful is important, and I don't know those guys, but that's a pretty high-paid staff. I would imagine somebody saw something. Correct me if I'm wrong. James had a comment that they didn't take the loss to Oregon well. So it had to have been at least on his mind because that is a telltale sign that practice is going to be quote-unquote iffy. And then you get some later in the week, you're like, oh, boy, I like the game plan, but are they going to execute it? You know, at some point it's on the players to get out of the fog. That makes me question the leadership. And it makes me question whether they realize that, hey, football is an every game situation. You don't just show up. It's all the way through the week. And you got a veteran team. You got a veteran coaching staff. Mm-hmm. None of it makes sense mathematically or logically. So there's a lot of questions he probably had to ask first before he even got to Kraft. And I doubt Kraft liked any of his answers anyway, because he's going to take crap because, I don't know how many people know this, but the press conference that James Franklin's getting fired ain't coming. He's owed $50 million or something like that. I just don't see it. This is not Texas A&M where there's oil money sprouting out of the ground everywhere. They're not going to look to be that way. They're probably going to be more judicious, I would imagine, unless he leaves on his own accord, which is possible. I don't think James Franklin's going anywhere.
That's a perfect segue to discuss all of that because fans they're angry. The people that have been calling for this move for a long time are like, yep, now it's due. It's going to happen. And now the people that are joining that crowd are saying, okay, when's it going to happen? There is a strong chance that none of this happens because Penn State is in a tough spot to make this kind of decision.